This is the place the artist must have reflected as he peered across the Lake Osceola expanse. It was April 1949 when Albin Polasek stood there and envisioned a home and studio that he hoped would one day be the place where his story would live on, inspiring future generations of artists and art lovers. This is his chosen place, a magical setting that he created, comprised of art and architecture, beauty and imagination. This is the Albin Polasek Museum and Sculpture Gardens. Born on St. Valentine's Day in 1879 in Frenstadt pod Radhostem, Moravia, now part of the Czech Republic. As a child, he would hide underneath a large table and carve wooden figures that made up his nativity. These figures, many of which were based on people within the village, were then painted with colors made from organic materials such as berries. After many abandoned apprenticeships, Polasek became a wood carver. During a family Christmas in 1901, he was persuaded by his two cleric brothers to start anew and immigrate to the United States when his siblings returned home to Minnesota. In 1905, Polasek moved to Philadelphia to begin his formal art training at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. During this time, he studied under Charles Grafley, a distinguished art educator and sculptor. Three years later, Polasek won the prestigious Prix de Rome Fellowship for his sculpture, Aspiration. Created because of an argument with a fellow sculptor, Aspiration represents Polasek's belief in the importance of working in the round. All sides of the sculpture should be equally intriguing and well executed. The fellowship granted him 3 years of study at the American Academy in Rome. At the conclusion of his fellowship, Polasek returned to the United States, taking up residence in New York City at number 9 McDougal Alley, a popular location, an unlikely artist colony, merging artists' homes and workspaces in former stables. In the summer of 1916, Polasek was invited to join the faculty of the Art Institute of Chicago as head of the sculpture department. By fall, he had relocated to the Windy City, where he taught for almost 30 years. It was during this tenure that he created over a dozen pieces that can still be viewed throughout the city. As a student in 1907, Polasek created Man Carving His Own Destiny, then Man Chiseling His Own Destiny, an homage to his personal struggle to establish himself in this world. Following his retirement from the Art Institute of Chicago, Polasek relocated to Winter Park, Florida. Unfortunately, he suffered a stroke shortly thereafter, paralyzing the left side of his body and confining him to a wheelchair. However, Polasek did not cower in the face of adversity, but continued to create art. Albin's most monumental post-stroke work sits just outside the front gate of this building. Carved with the assistance of Robert A. Bailey, a fellow sculptor, in April of 1939, Polasek was invited to give a speech to the National Institute of Immigrant Welfare. From this eloquent address came one of Polasek's most recognized quotes about his journey and perseverance, as well as pays tribute to his signature work. In the heart of Czechoslovakia, a piece of rock broke from the Carpathian Mountains. Later, this crude stone was transported to the land of the free, the United States of America. The block of stone was myself. In December of 1950, at age 71, Polasek married Ruth Sherwood, a former student, sculptor, and his original biographer. It was the first marriage for each of them. However, fate would intervene when she died a mere 22 months later, following a long battle with throat cancer. 9 years later, in April of 1961, he married a longtime friend and fellow Czechoslovakian, Emily Muska-Kubat. Together, they established the Albin Polasek Foundation that same year, transferring all art, artifacts, holdings, and intellectual property to that foundation, effectually forming this museum. In 2000, the foundation purchased the property adjacent to our east border. 13 years later, in an inspiring community-driven effort to save one of the oldest surviving homes in Winter Park, the historic Capen House was floated across Lake Osceola in two halves, dubbed Fred and Ginger, saving it from demolition and giving it purpose as a storied place where new stories come to life. It was an act of serendipity, as Polasek's closest friend in Chicago, Percy Eckhart, was married to the niece of the home's builder and one of the founders of Winter Park, James Seymour Capen. Today, the house is adorned with sculptural portraits of members of the Eckhart family created by Polasek, including this lyrical 1920 bronze of 6-year-old Elizabeth Eckhart. Sculpted in his Chicago studio, it is a perfect example of Polasek's use of movement. Polasek died on May 19, 1965, at the age of 86, and was laid to rest in the Winter Park Palm Cemetery with Ruth and later Emily. His legacy endures through the Albin Polasek Museum and Sculpture Gardens. Today, this property stands as a living memorial to the artist himself, striving to enrich lives through the power of inspiration, experienced through its story, setting, and collection. As Polasek once said, "I have made sculptures for the future. If now and then some wanderer comes along who understands their message, I shall rest content."